Ecology. Ecology is the branch of biology that deals with the relationships of organisms to one another and their physical surroundings. Ecology. Ecology is the branch of biology that deals with the relations of organisms to one another and their physical surroundings. Welcome to AP Biology. Here's the basics. It's the relationship between organisms in their ecosystem, population, and community. These organisms work with each other and other organisms in order to maintain natural balance. Some organisms prey on each other while others are altruistic or help one another. In all organisms, they are made up of cells. However, there is a difference between plant and animal cells. Animal cells have a cleavage furrow and doesn't have a thick cell wall like the plant cells. Most of the space in the plant cells have huge vacuoles which hold water.
You may already know, plants like these go through a process called photosynthesis, which is basically the conversion of sunlight and carbon dioxide and water into glucose, which plants use as food, and O2, which we breathe. Most organisms also perform a process called cell respiration, which is basically the opposite of photosynthesis, like this dog. This pollen right here is a good example of mutualism. Bees will deposit the pollen, or which is, in other words, is like flower sperm, into the flowers to fertilize them, and in return, the flowers will give bees nectar, which is food for them.
Now there's other types of relationships too that are not just benefiting each other, like mutualism. There's parasitism where one organism benefits and the other one is extremely harmed. Now there is also commensalism, when one organism does benefit, but the other one is neither harmed or benefits at all.
Every living thing you can see is made up of at least some of the following four substances: nucleic acids, lipids, proteins, and carbohydrates. Nucleic acids make up the smallest amount of these organisms since they only make up their DNA. Carbohydrates arguably make up the largest part, and they are made of monosaccharides, which is the smallest unit of a carbohydrate, which are then joined by glycosidic linkages to form disaccharides, which are then also joined together to form polysaccharides. Examples of carbohydrates include many different types of sugars. On the other hand, proteins are also very important in structure and function of organisms. Proteins are made of amino acids and have 4 different levels of structure: primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structure. Thank you for watching our video. We hope you found the information in it very useful.
Well, best of luck. It's going to be a rough year, but you can do it. Mrs. Warnock prepares your AP course very well, and best of luck. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Biology 101 with Christian and me, Dan Sullivan. Today we are going to teach you about one of the major processes of life. No, we are not talking about puberty, but cell respiration. Cell respiration is the chemical process that generates most of the energy in the cells in your body. The equation for cell respiration is C6H12O6 plus O2, which is oxygen, equals CO2, which is carbon dioxide, H2O, which is water, and ATP, which is also known as energy. Cell respiration is divided into 3 stages: glycolysis, the citric acid cycle, and oxidative phosphorylation, which is then divided into 2 subgroups, which are chemiosmosis and the electron transport chain, or ETC for short. The first step of cell respiration, glycolysis, occurs in the cytoplasm. Glycolysis is the only step that does not require oxygen. This method shows how prehistoric life forms didn't need oxygen, and also sometimes go through 2 other steps of glycolysis: lactic acid fermentation or alcoholic fermentation, which is a whole different discussion. The requirements for glycolysis are 1 molecule of glucose, which has a 6-carbon sugar, 2 molecules of NAD, and 2 molecules of ATP. It starts off with a 6-carbon sugar splitting up into 2 pyruvates, which consists of 3 carbon sugars. Enzymes interact with the pyruvates, dropping H2O, 2 NADHs, and 4 ATP. However, we only have a net of 2 ATP due to using 2 at the beginning of the cycle. After the pyruvates are stripped, they undergo pyruvate oxidation. A carboxyl group is removed and released as carbon dioxide. In the citric acid cycle, the acetyl-CoA binds with oxaloacetate and then goes through the cycle. This new acid is known as citric acid. The rest of the chemicals that are formed throughout the cycle are not important to know, but it is important to know that acetyl-CoA binds with oxaloacetate to form citrate. The citric acid cycle doesn't generate a lot of ATP, only 2, but creates 6 NADHs, 4 CO2s, 2 FADHs, and 2 ATPs. The NADHs and FADHs are then used in the electron transport chain. Also, as a side note, since 2 pyruvates were formed in glycolysis, the citric acid cycle will occur twice per molecule of glucose. So technically, the net products are doubled.
Also, when you have your pyruvate, to get to the bind with a CoA, it actually loses an NAD, which adds an NHDH+, and then one carbon molecule breaks off to have CO2, thus leaving 2, which allows the binding of acetyl-CoA. I mean, not acetyl-CoA. Yeah, the coenzyme A, and then just binds with acetyl-CoA. Yeah, acetyl-acetate. So, side note.
Once we are at the ETC, the hydrogen electrons are stripped from the NADH, then travel across the inner mitochondrial matrix into the intermembrane space, providing a pump along a chain of channel proteins. These proteins will swap the electrons to send hydrogen protons from inside the center of the mitochondria across the outer compartment of the mitochondria. Once out, the protons want to get back to the inner membrane to have an equilibrium. The final step of oxidative phosphorylation is chemiosmosis, which is the movement of ions across the semipermeable membrane down their electrochemical gradient. An example of this would be the generation of adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, by the movement of hydrogen ions across the membrane during cellular respiration or photosynthesis. In the end, cellular respiration will create 6 CO2s and somewhere between 32 and 38 ATP. Now that you understand cellular respiration, you understand one of the most difficult concepts in AP biology. Now let's talk about a sub-level of glycolysis, which is fermentation. Lactic acid fermentation is a metabolic process by which glucose, a 6-carbon sugar, is converted into cellular energy and the metabolite lactate. When there is no oxygen present, enzymes have to use lactic acid fermentation for energy instead of cell respiration. Alcoholic fermentation consists of pyruvate being first converted into acetaldehyde by the enzyme pyruvate decarboxylase and releasing CO2. In the second step, acetaldehyde is converted into ethanol using alcohol dehydrogenase and producing NAD+ and NAD+. In the process, this is recycled NAD+, that can be used to continue on with glycolysis.